Re, very lebakokwane. Greetings from Musoni. Ntukulu wabangoni ni baNTU. So Todd McFarland replied to my YouTube video titled "The Ancient Egyptians Were Black. Hear Me Out." This is a part 2 that he responded to with the question, the Vikings left behind thousands of combs just like those. Were they black too? And the short answer to that is that is a lie. The Vikings never left any combs similar to those of the ancient Egyptians. It's an internet rumor spread by Eurocentric trolls who are trying to distort the truth. And I'm going to present some scholarly evidence, as we always do on this channel. And guess what? All three sources, all three scholars that I'll be presenting are all Europeans. So no one can make excuses about some Afrocentric this and that. And the first source is, of course, Dr. Sally Ann Ashton, whom I used in the original video. On her page, the Kemetic Expert, she's showing a display from the museum, Cambridge, where there is the iconic Black Power comb, Afro comb, next to the ancient Egyptian comb, showing the similarities. On her page, she continues to say that it is worth noting that we do not find this type of hair pick in any ancient cultures outside of Africa. And even William Matthew Flinders Petrie, that she mentioned, also stated that the early European combs of Bronze Age and onward differ entirely from the Egyptian examples, being always single-edged and run back. So that's my second source, Petrie, the old school Egyptologist. Make sure you remember that part, single-edged and run back. Dr. Sally goes on to state that there are parallels in the decorative techniques that were used in both Kemet and West African cultures. The incised circular decoration on the teeth of the Dawu comb, below right, was also used in ancient Egypt. And Dawu is in Ghana, in Accra. So parallels are being drawn as well here. And my third and last source is Professor Dan Carlson. He has been working on excavations in many Viking settlements, specifically the burial sites, for over 7 years. This section I'm displaying right now comes from his paper titled Combs and Comb Making in Viking Age and the Middle Ages. And he states, so you can see the different type of combs are classified here. The artifacts into A1, A2, A3, B1, 1, B1, 2, B1, 3, B2, B3, B4. And on the left, he explains these classifications. Combs are many times divided into different groups according to datings or ways of making them and some other criteria. The combs from the cemetery at the Viking town of Birka in Middle Sweden, dated to AD 750 to 950, are grouped into two different categories according to construction, form, and decoration. The A combs are older and of genuine Scandinavian origin. The B combs are a bit younger in an area manufacturing in the northern part of Germany and Denmark. So you can see these type of combs which the Vikings used. And a more comprehensive breakdown of the composite single comb. Remember what I said earlier? This description of the comb is more aligned to Petrie's description of how European combs were formed. And it states here that the most common comb in Viking Age is a composite single comb, as you can see in the diagram above. Some of these combs have a case to fit in the comb. Most of the combs with cases belongs to men, and usually there is a hole in the case to lock the comb into it. The rivets are normally made of bronze, but could also be of iron. So you can see the type of combs that the Vikings made are usually made for hair that needs to be combed down. These are very different from the pick type, which is designed for the force, combing up force. As you can see, the Viking combs are completely different from the ancient Egyptian Afro combs. Now that the myth has been completely dispelled, I'm going to add a bonus in relation to the hair of the ancient Egyptians and modern baNTU people. And that bonus is the fact that only African hair locks. I know there are a lot of people, even African people, that don't actually understand this. Yes, you do find white people with braids, braids and so-called dreadlocks. But I am telling you that their hair does not lock. They have to use certain interventions or chemicals of some sort to lock their hair. And I've said it before that I know there are black people that even argue against this fact, but one thing they cannot prove, they cannot show you a person with Caucasian hair with locks this thin. Why this thin and this long is because mine were not made in the salon. I made them myself organically. They were not twisted using hands. I simply used a face cloth and just washed my hair in the same direction every day until they locked immediately, and they just stayed in that pattern. Now, that cannot happen at all with Caucasian hair. And those who disagree must actually show me any person that is not African with actually locks this thin and this short. And these many, because you can imagine how long it would take to actually twist them with their hands when they're this small. Even black people who actually go to the salon to twist their locks, they're usually much bigger. And now what you're looking at right now is a picture of Ramesu II as a child. He was often displayed with a side braid, and on the right you see a modern African child with a similar braid. So what does this have to do with locks? Because African hair, when you start twisting, braiding it, when you have done maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 twists and you let it go, it stays there. But if you do the same thing with a white person's hair, when you let it go, the braid is gonna be undone immediately. That is why Caucasians have to use strings at the end to hold the braid, because when you remove that string, the braid will be undone. The adults usually use invisible strings so that it doesn't show. Now, this is how I actually stumbled into the fact that Caucasian hair doesn't lock. Of course, as an African, I wouldn't know, because the only experience I've had is my own hair. So back in high school in the 90s, I was in a multiracial school, and the white kids loved, hip hop, and they always wanted to have the look. And one of the white kids did cornrows. And at assembly, before the classes open on a Monday morning, one of the teachers approached him and said, "Remove that stuff right now." And I was completely puzzled, like, doesn't she know you need to go to the salon to undo the braids? You can't just undo them yourself. It's going to take time. And to my shock, I didn't see the strings. The boy removed the strings, and within 2 seconds, all the cornrows were completely undone. That is not possible for black hair. It's not possible. It's gonna take hours to undo the hair. Just like this is gone. I cannot undo this. It's locked already. So that's how I actually came to discover, and it only made sense to me that they have to do something, some intervention for them to have locks. It doesn't happen naturally like with our hair. So when you see Caucasians with braids or locks, it's usually an imitation of an African hairstyle, whether you want to call it appropriation or appreciation or whatnot. And yes, I've also seen braids from ancient times, but all of them you will realize, for example, if you find it among ancient Greeks or Romans, you will know that it was inspired by what they seen in African women. So in conclusion, the hair of the ancient Egyptians, strictly baNTU. The combs that they use are strictly baNTU Afro combs. That's it from me, Musoni, Ntukulu Wabangoni, baNTU. Please share the video, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed so you don't miss out on any of these great ancestral whispers. From me, Musoni, peace and African power.